jungle echoes with a loud roar as the mother tiger leaps out from the shadows. She is injured but still fierce, her fury unstoppable. Nets are cast, spears are raised, but she doesn't back down. Her courage reverberates through the forest. But how did the hunters find the tiger and her cubs? Let's go back to a month before it all happened. In a small village in the Sundarbans, the air smells of earth, and the calls of jungle birds fill the sky. This is a land where mangrove forests stretch endlessly and rivers twist like snakes through the terrain. It's a place of breathtaking beauty, but also of constant struggle. In this village lived an old woman named Maria. Maria knew the meaning of hard work. Every morning as the sun rose, she went to her small field. Her hands were calloused from years of labor under the scorching sun, her back ached and her legs trembled, but she never complained. She had to keep going, there was no one else to help her. Under a nearby tree, her son, Jack, sat idly. He was young and strong, but he despised working in the fields or the jungle. Jack dreamed of the city, its bright lights, quick money, and a life free from the sweat and dirt of the village. "Ma!" Jack called sharply. "I need money. I'm going to the city." Maria paused her work and wiped the sweat from her face with her sari. She turned to look at her son, her heart heavy. She had heard this before. Jack often talked about the city, about how he would become rich and return as a wealthy man. But Maria knew better. She understood the city was a place of dreams, but also of shattered hopes. Still, she couldn't refuse him. She never could. With a sigh, she reached into her sari and pulled out a small bundle of Bilsha meager savings earned from selling herbs and fruits at the market. "Here," she said, handing him the money. "But be careful, Jack. The city is not like the village. It's a dangerous place." Jack took the money without a word of thanks. He stood, brushing the dust off his clothes. "Don't worry, Ma. I'll come back rich, you'll see." Maria wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe her son would return one day and finally take care of her, as she had always cared for him. But deep down, she knew the truth. She had seen the way he looked at her, not with love, but with indifference. Without a glance back, Jack walked away, his footsteps crunching on the dry ground. Maria watched him go, her heart breaking a little more with each step he took. She wanted to call out to him, to beg him to stay, but the words stuck in her throat. Maria stood alone in the field, the sun beating down on her frail shoulders. The jungle loomed behind her, its shadows long and dark against the ground. For the first time in years, Maria felt truly alone. But she didn't cry, she couldn't. There was too much work to do. With a deep breath, she bent down and picked up her hoe, her hands trembling as she returned to the soil. The village around her was quiet, the only sound the rustling of leaves in the wind. After Jack left, Maria had no choice but to venture deeper into the jungle. The fields alone didn't provide enough food, and the market was too far to visit every day. So she began searching the jungle for food, gathering fruits, herbs, and anything she could find to sell or eat. The villagers warned her. "The jungle isn't safe for an old woman," they said. "The tigers, the snakes, the spirits, they'll harm you if you're not careful." But Maria wasn't afraid, or rather, she had no choice. Hunger and loneliness pushed her forward, step by step, into the shadows of the trees. One afternoon, with the sun high in the sky, Maria found herself deeper in the jungle than ever before. The sounds of the village were far behind her now. All she could hear was the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, and the occasional distant roar of a tiger. She moved carefully, her eyes scanning the ground for herbs, her ears alert for danger. Then she heard it, a low, painful growl. Maria froze, her heart pounding as she turned toward the sound. Just a few steps away lay a tiger. But this wasn't an ordinary tiger. She was massive, her golden fur dirty and matted with blood. Her sides heaved with labored breaths, and her piercing eyes were clouded with pain. Maria's first instinct was to run. Every part of her screamed to turn and escape. But something held her in place. Maybe it was the way the tiger's growl softened when their eyes met. Maybe it was the way the tiger's body trembled, not with rage, but with exhaustion. Or maybe it was the faint, desperate cry coming from her swollen belly. This tiger was pregnant and she was in trouble. Maria's fear began to fade, replaced by something else. Compassion. She had spent her life caring for others, even when they didn't deserve it. And now, here was a creature in desperate need of help. Slowly and carefully, Maria stepped closer to the tiger. She spoke softly, her voice trembling but steady. "Shh, it's okay. I won't hurt you." The tiger growled again, but it was weak, almost like a plea. Maria knelt beside her, her hands shaking as she reached out. She saw the deep wound on the tiger's side, still bleeding. She also saw the tiger's belly moving, the cubs inside struggling to be born. Maria knew what she had to do. Using her knowledge of herbs, she gathered leaves and roots from nearby plants, crushing them into a paste to stop the bleeding. As she worked, she murmured soothing words, her hands moving gently despite her fear. The tiger's eyes never left Maria's face. Then the moment came. The tiger let out a deep guttural cry, and Maria knew the cubs were coming. With trembling hands, she helped deliver them two small, helpless creatures with wet fur and closed eyes. The tiger licked her cubs clean, her movements slow and deliberate, as if silently thanking Maria with every touch. Back in Maria's small hut at the edge of the village, the sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. Maria was inside, preparing her morning meal, when she heard a sound outside, a low, rumbling growl. But it wasn't threatening. It sounded gentle, almost curious. Heart pounding, Maria stepped outside. Her breath caught as she saw who was waiting for her. There, in the soft light of dawn, stood the tiger. Beside her, wobbling on unsteady legs, were her two cubs. The tiger's golden eyes met Maria's, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Maria's first instinct is to go back inside and shut the door. But something stops her. The tiger isn't growling or preparing to attack. She's just standing there, her cubs nuzzling against her. It's as if she's come to say thank you. Carefully, Maria takes a step forward. The tiger doesn't move. Another step, and then another, until Maria is close enough to see the faint scars on the tiger's side, the wound she had helped heal. "You came back," Maria whispers, her voice trembling with surprise. The tiger lets out a soft growl, almost like a purr, and nudges one of her cubs forward. The tiny cub stumbles toward Maria, its little paws sinking into the soft ground. Maria kneels down, her hands shaking as she extends them. The cub sniffs her fingers, then licks them with its rough tongue. In that moment, something shifts. The fear that had gripped Maria disappears, replaced by a warmth she hadn't felt in years. She looks up at the tiger, and for the first time in what feels like forever, she smiles. From that day on, the tiger becomes a part of Maria's life. Every morning, the tiger waits outside her hut, her cubs playing at her feet. And every morning, Maria steps out to greet them, her heart filled with a joy she thought she had lost. The tiger isn't just a visitor, she becomes a guide. She leads Maria deep into the jungle, to places the old woman had never dared venture. Hidden groves bursting with ripe fruit, streams teeming with fish, and clearings where the rarest herbs grow. With the tiger by her side, Maria no longer struggles to find food. Her baskets are always full, and she always has enough to eat. But it's more than that. The tiger becomes her companion, her friend. Together, they walk through the jungle, the cubs running ahead, their playful growls echoing through the trees. Maria talks to the tiger as if she can understand every word, and sometimes it feels like she does. One evening, as the sun sets and the jungle grows quiet, Maria sits outside her hut, sharing a meal with the tiger. She breaks off a piece of bread and tosses it to the cubs, laughing as they pounce on it with clumsy enthusiasm. The tiger watches her, her golden eyes soft in the fading light. For the first time in years, Maria feels at peace. The loneliness that had weighed so heavily on her heart is gone, replaced by a sense of belonging she never thought possible. But peace, as we'll soon see, doesn't last forever. The sun hangs high in the sky, casting sharp shadows on the dusty paths. The villagers are busy with their daily tasks when a group of strangers arrives, stirring unease in the quiet community. These strangers are hunters rough, hardened men with weathered faces and greedy eyes. They carry spears, nets, and traps, moving with a dangerous determination. Among them, looking uneasy and out of place, is Jack. Yes, Jack Maria's son. The same Jack who left for the city dreaming of wealth, but returned with nothing but desperation. Jack isn't leading the hunters, he's merely their guide. He claims to know the jungle, though his knowledge is patchy at best. He knows about the tiger, but not about her cubs. All he knows is that there's a big tiger in the jungle, a creature worth a fortune to the right buyer. The villagers watch uneasily as the hunters set up camp at the edge of the village. They whisper among themselves, their voices filled with concern. Tigers are sacred here, and the jungle is not to be disturbed. But the hunters don't care. They're here for one reason: profit. Meanwhile, Maria is in her small hut, grinding herbs to sell at the market, when she hears voices outside. Curious, she steps out and freezes when she sees Jack with the hunters. He looks different, skinnier, tougher, but nervous. His eyes dart around as he talks to the men, his words quick and uncertain. Feeling uneasy, Maria quietly moves closer, hiding in the shadows to listen. What she hears makes her heart sink. "The tiger is deep in the jungle," Jack says in a shaky voice. "She's huge, the biggest I've ever seen. She'll fetch a lot of money." One of the hunters grins wickedly and asks, "Are you sure you can take us to her?" Jack hesitates for a moment, then nods. "I know the way, but we have to be careful. The jungle is dangerous." The hunters laugh loudly, their laughter harsh and mocking. "We're not afraid of some trees," one sneers. "Let's go." Maria's hands tremble as she grips the edge of her sari. She can't let this happen. She can't let them hurt the tiger, her friend, her companion. But what can she do? She's just one old woman, and they're a group of armed men. Still, she knows she has to try. As the hunters gather their weapons and head toward the jungle, Maria slips away, her heart pounding. She knows she has to warn the tiger. She moves as fast as her old legs can carry her, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The jungle looms ahead, dark and menacing. But she doesn't stop. Maria rushes into the trees, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of the tiger. She calls out softly, her voice trembling, "Where are you? Please, you have to hide. They're coming." But the jungle is vast, and the tiger could be anywhere. Maria pushes deeper, her feet stumbling over roots and rocks. Behind her, she can hear the hunters, their voices growing louder as they make their way through the forest. Time is running out. The hunters move swiftly, their traps ready and weapons in hand. Jack trails behind them, his face a mix of nervousness and greed. He's not their leader, just a desperate man willing to do anything for money. The hunters find the tiger's den hidden deep in the jungle, a quiet, serene place where sunlight filters gently through the trees. But today, it's anything but peaceful. The hunters move cautiously, their eyes gleaming with greed, as they spot the two cubs playing near the entrance of the den. The cubs are small, their fur soft and golden, their eyes wide with innocence. They don't understand the danger until it's too late. With swift precision, the hunters close in, their nets snapping through the air. The cubs cry out, their tiny growls filled with fear as they're ensnared and shoved into a cage. One of the hunters whistles, his eyes alight with excitement. "Look at these cubs," he says, his voice dripping with greed. "They're perfect, young, healthy. These will sell for twice what the big one would." The others nod, their cruel smiles widening. "Forget the mother," another hunter sneers. "These cubs are the real prize." Jack stands to the side, his face pale. He didn't know about the cubs. He had only told the hunters about the big tiger, the one he thought would make him rich. But now, seeing the hunters' excitement, he feels a flicker of hope. Maybe this will work out after all. Then the jungle erupts. The tiger, the mother, bursts from the shadows like a storm. Her golden eyes blaze with fury, her powerful body coiled to attack. She lets out a roar so fierce it shakes the trees, a sound so primal it sends chills down even the bravest hunter's spines. But the hunters are prepared. They form a circle around her, their spears raised, their faces grim with determination. The tiger charges, her claws slicing through the air, her teeth bared in a furious snarl. She's relentless, a force of nature, a mother fighting to protect her young. But she's outnumbered. A hunter throws a net, and it tangles around her legs. Another strikes her with the blunt end of a spear, forcing her to the ground. The tiger roars again, a sound filled with pain and defiance. But the hunters press on. Then Maria arrives. She stumbles into the clearing, her chest heaving, her face streaked with sweat and tears. She takes in the scene, the cubs trapped in a cage, the tiger struggling against the hunters, and Jack standing on the sidelines, a gun trembling in his hands. "Stop!" Maria cries, her voice cracking with desperation. "Please stop!" The hunters pause, turning to look at her with cold, emotionless eyes. But Jack, before anyone can stop him, Jack pulls the trigger. The gunshot echoes through the jungle, sharp and cruel, silencing the birds and rustling leaves. The tiger lets out a roar of pain, stumbling backward, her golden body collapsing to the ground. Her cubs cry out from the cage, their small voices filled with fear and grief. Maria falls to her knees, her hands covering her face as tears stream down her cheeks. "No," she whispers, her voice breaking. "What have you done, Jack? What have you done?" Jack lowers the gun, his hands trembling as he looks at what he's done. For a moment, guilt flashes in his eyes, but it's quickly replaced by cold indifference. He turns to the hunters, his voice shaky but determined. "There, it's done. Now pay me." The hunters exchange glances, their faces hard. One of them nods and tosses a small pouch of coins to Jack, who catches it with a triumphant smirk. But the smirk fades quickly as he looks at the lifeless tiger, her once bright eyes now dull and empty. Maria crawls to the tiger's side, her hands trembling as she strokes the blood-streaked fur. "You didn't have to do this," she says softly, her voice choked with sorrow. "She trusted me. She trusted us." Jack avoids her gaze, shoving the pouch of coins into his pocket. "She was just an animal, Ma," he mutters, his tone defensive. "You'll see. This money will help us. It'll make everything better." But Maria shakes her head, her tears falling onto the tiger's fur. "Money won't fix this, Jack. It won't bring her back." As the hunters begin to pack up their traps and prepare to leave, the jungle seems to mourn. The air is heavy, the usual vibrant sounds of life replaced by an eerie silence. Even the hunters seem uneasy, glancing over their shoulders as they move away from the den. Jack lingers for a moment, looking at his mother kneeling beside the tiger. He opens his mouth to speak, but no words come out. Finally, he turns and walks away, following the hunters back to the village. Maria stays behind, her heart heavy with grief. She gently strokes the tiger's fur one last time, whispering a prayer for the creature who had been her friend, her protector, her companion. The cubs in the cage cry out again, their small voices filled with sorrow. Maria stands slowly, her body aching with the weight of her loss. She walks to the cage, her hands shaking as she opens it. The cubs tumble out, looking up at her with wide, frightened eyes. "You're free now," she whispers, her voice trembling. "Go. Be safe." But the cubs don't run. Instead, they nuzzle against her legs, their tiny bodies trembling. Maria looks down at them, her tears falling onto their soft fur. "I'll take care of you," she promises softly. "I'll protect you. I won't let anyone hurt you." As the sun sets and darkness falls over the jungle, Maria gathers the cubs in her arms and begins the long walk back to her hut. Behind her, the jungle seems to sigh. its shadows long and heavy with loss. But in her arms, the cubs stir, their small cries, a faint glimmer of hope in the silence. And so, Maria begins a new chapter, one filled with grief, but also a quiet determination to honor the tiger's memory and care for the two lives left behind. The cubs, once small and fragile, grew quickly under Maria's care. Her humble hut, once quiet and empty, now echoed with their playful growls and the soft patter of tiny paws. The cubs chased each other through the small space, their golden fur glowing in the sunlight that streamed through the windows. Maria watched them with a gentle smile, her heart filling with a joy she thought had been lost forever. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the cubs grew stronger. Their playful antics became bolder, their roars louder, and their bond with Maria deeper. Maria became their teacher, showing them how to move through the jungle, find food, and stay safe. But more than survival, she taught them love and trust. Though the villagers initially whispered about Maria's strange bond with the tigers, fear keeping them at a distance, their perspective began to change as time passed. One day, Maria walked through the village with the tigers, now nearly grown, padding gracefully by her side. A pack of wild dogs appeared, their eyes gleaming with hunger. The villagers froze in fear, unable to move as the dogs crept closer. Before the dogs could attack, the tigers stepped forward, their muscular bodies blocking Maria's path. They let out low, deep growls, their golden eyes blazing with warning. The dogs, sensing the tiger's strength, whimpered and retreated, their tails tucked between their legs. The villagers watched in awe. Their fear melted into respect as they began to see the tigers not as threats, but as protectors, guardians of both the jungle and Maria. Years passed, and the bond between Maria and the tigers only grew stronger. The cubs had become majestic, powerful creatures with golden coats that shimmered in the sunlight. Yet, despite their size and strength, they remained gentle with Maria, their loyalty unwavering. Maria, now older and frailer, spent her days under a large tree near her hut. The tigers rested at her feet, their massive forms a comforting presence. She watched the jungle with peace in her heart, grateful for the life she had built and the family she had found in the tigers. One evening, as the sun set and the jungle grew quiet, Maria passed away peacefully, her hand resting on the head of one of the tigers. The tiger let out a mournful sound, its golden eyes filled with sorrow. When the villagers discovered what had happened, they gathered to honor Maria's memory. They held a ceremony under the great tree where she had spent her final days. They lit candles, offered flowers, and shared stories of her kindness and bravery. The tigers stood nearby, silent and still, their golden eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. Though their protector was gone, they remained guardians of the jungle, carrying Maria's legacy of love, courage, and harmony with nature. And so, the story of Maria and her tigers lived on, passed down through generations, a tale of how love can bridge the wild and the human, creating bonds that even death could not sever.